exactly. I mean, Disney managed the Muppet assets. So my guess is they will do something.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Justin Talks Puppets. And over the weekend, I got a special invite by Julien's Auctions, which is a Hollywood movie auction house. They sell a bunch of different props and memorabilia and all that awesome stuff. In honor of the Jim Henson Company celebrating their 70th anniversary as a company in total, they have decided to partner up with Julien's Auction, and they're actually auctioning off some really cool Muppet sets and props that were actually used in different Muppet productions and movies and TV shows, along with several Jim Henson Company production sets, props, and other really cool items like actual screen used puppets and other props, with other countless of items from not only the Muppet Archive, but the Jim Henson Company and other Jim Henson production archives. You can check out the live auction in person or online. They'll be streaming it on November 25th, 2025. And to add the cherry on top, they'll be holding this live auction at what used to be the original Jim Henson Studios, or better known as the Charlie Chaplin Studios in Hollywood, California. So for more information on all that awesomeness, please go in my description box below. I've listed the Julien's website in the links below, and other information as well can be found there. So once again, a huge shout out and thank you to Julien's Auction for inviting me out this past weekend to the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood, California. In honor of celebrating the Jim Henson Company's 70th anniversary, they were holding a special screening of Muppet Treasure Island, which was super cool because I'd never seen Muppet Treasure Island on the big screen. I watched it countless upon times here in my house, but I never officially got to see it on the big screen. So that was a treat within itself. To even add another cherry on top of this really cool and awesome Sunday, they actually had some props, items, and other really cool things in the lobby area that you could check out that are going to be a part of the auction on November 25th. So many cool puppets on display from not only Muppet history, but Jim Henson production history as well. But another cool little special treat was that Brian Henson actually did a Q&A at the end of the Muppet Treasure Island screening, and he was answering fan questions, got to talk a little bit about what it was like working on Muppet Treasure Island, what it was like working on Muppet Christmas Carol, and mainly his thoughts and opinions on the future of the Muppets. So without further ado, here is Brian Henson discussing all that. Enjoy.
Rally, please welcome director Brian.
So this is the first time I've seen the movie with a theater crowd since we released it.
Wow.
I mean, it's so great to see it up on the big screen. It was wow, it's a big film. It's like I'm looking at it like, wow, that really is. Oh, yeah, that was hard. Yeah,
So this was your follow-up to Christmas Carol, once again digging into the great works of English literature via the Muppets. What was the process in picking what the next adaptation was going to be? What were some contenders that ultimately didn't get done?
Well, you know what? I don't really remember many contenders, because I think it was while we were making Christmas Carol that we were already discussing what would be next. We were talking about Murder on the Orient Express. We were going in a lot of different directions, and interestingly, Christmas Carol now is very beloved, which is terrific. But at the time, we had a lot of negative reviews that it wasn't funny enough. And it was only 2 years after we made Christmas Carol that we made this. And so we were all dead set on making this a lot funnier than Christmas Carol. So I was looking for, with Christmas Carol, there's a conflict or contrast that's Charles Dickens and Muppets, and the whole movie is around that contrast, that conflict that makes it exciting. So I knew I wanted another world that was dark and dangerous and sort of the opposite of the Muppets, so that I could still be in that sort of rich, interesting contrast, so we did really think about Murder on the Orient Express, and it just, anyway, I really wanted to do a crazy swashbuckling pirate movie. And yeah, so that's when we decided to do this.
A film that has musical numbers, has, breakdowns that have to happen. But turning a novel into a Muppet movie with musicals, how does that even start in terms of deciding who's going to be a human and who's not, deciding where you get to go crazy and where you have to be true to Stevenson?
Well, it's interesting. So I'm going to go back to Christmas Carol again,
Sure.
because Jerry Jewell very quickly, because we set about Christmas Carol initially thinking we were going to sort of parody, satire Christmas Carol. And then very quickly, Jerry Jewell, who was the only writer on Christmas Carol, he just felt, it's such a beautiful novel. And then we had the idea of having Gonzo in it doing all of Charles Dickens' prose. So it was a real straightforward adaptation. So that one it's almost all Dickens, and even all the dialogue is usually Dickens, sometimes delivered by a Muppet so that it comes across as a joke because it seems so unlikely. With this one it was different because we knew that A, we wanted it really funny, and B, the biggest problem was Robert Louis Stevenson wrote a novel about a boy coming of age, and the critical scene in the third act is Jim Hawkins climbing up to the crow's nest with a musket and shooting a pirate in the face who thinks he doesn't have the guts to shoot him because he's just a kid, and then watching as the pirate dies slowly over a half an hour on the deck. So there was no way to so there was just no way we could do that, and so we had to think of a whole different way to tell the story. And honestly, we went through a lot of approaches, mostly in an outline form and scripts, and Jerry was saying, I can't figure out the story. So he was sort of saying, somebody else has to figure out the story, and then let me come back in. And so Jim Hart, this was the first time I worked with Jim Hart, and Jim Hart is one of the greatest structuralists. And so Jim was the one who put together how to tell the story. And you can see we're not very faithful to Robert Stevenson. We're really not. But we're trying to basically tell the same story. And so that structure came from Jim. And then Jerry Jewell worked with Kirk Thatcher, and Kirk Thatcher is a really kind of crazy comedian. Like, his stuff is really out there, and like Bimbo, Mr. Bimbo living in Foz's Finger. When Frank Oz read that, he was like, this is the stupidest idea ever. And nobody's gonna like it. And of course, we would do a table read, and everyone would laugh, and he goes, everybody's laughing because it's a table read. It'll never work in the movie, and then we shot it, and he was like, and everybody thought it was hilarious, and he was like, okay. We'll do it. But this one, so there was a big effort to make this one much more of a comedy than Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol really is a drama.
Sure.
And that was like our secret was like, don't tell Disney we're making a drama. And their notes would always come back, could be funnier. And they'd see the rushes, and it was, could be brighter. Don't tell them it's a drama. So, but this one we really did set out to make it funny and entertaining. And scene for scene, it's really a feast, this movie. And it's really hard. It's big, it's significantly bigger budget, longer shooting schedule than Christmas Carol, because it's 3 movies. There's one movie that's in England, at Bristol, and then there's one movie that's on the high seas, and puppets and water don't go well together. And then there's a whole movie on a Caribbean island. And I had to pull all of this cast with me because eventually they were going to have to separate into 3 groups that were still pretty sizable. So it forced the whole movie to carry a much bigger cast than any of the other Muppet movies. So it became just a much bigger, more complicated movie. But boy, I enjoyed watching it just now. I really did. Enough years have gone by. But yeah, he did this thing. So in that very last one, he hits that. He goes way up there with his voice, and it's full out. And where he gets picked up and he's held over Sweetum's head. And I remember we were ready to roll. Let's get big shots. Big shot cameras on crane. And I said, Tim, are you ready? And he said, just give me 1 moment. And I watched as he breathed himself into a superstar. And it was like, I've never seen that, where he just literally went, and it's just like all this energy just came up into his face, and he suddenly becomes bigger than life, and then he says, yeah, go. And then, and then he did that. But he's just an extraordinary performer. And the little twist, he's playing broad. We decided all of this movie would be a little broader, largely because Kirk Thatcher's comedy gets so wild that it really requires a broad performance to make it all sit with fun. So all of his twists are just so lovely. You just go close onto Tim and you just twist. You just keep twisting the scene and twisting the movie and watching him go to the evil pirate, and then he breaks and turns the other way, and you love him again. That was great. Oh, but on music, I was going to say, so Kevin Bishop, when we hired him, he came in and I don't know how old he was, 13 probably, and he recorded that song once, kind of. We did pre-records that were sort of like rehearsals almost, just to make sure we had the right key for every singer. So Kevin went in front of the mic when we were in pre-production and sang the song, and then 3 weeks later his voice started breaking. So he was not able to sing anything when we were shooting because his voice was breaking. And all of his singing came from that track that he laid down before we started shooting. And it sounds great, but
did he go from like tenor to bass, or?
No. He just had that thing. When a kid's voice starts breaking, they also then can't hit notes that they can hear in their head, and so he just couldn't sing it. I mean, I guess we could have tried to record it in a different key, but honestly, he was struggling just hitting notes.
I remember Jim Hart saying at the time that for him, the biggest adjustment of working with the Muppets for the first time was being given notes like, Kermit would never say that. And so, as somebody who was, established right at this point, Hook and other films, what was it like incorporating him inside of, you've got Frank Oz, you've got all these people that you've worked with before, and what is the crash course like of learning what Kermit wouldn't say?
Well, I'm not a big fan of people saying that, because I think characters need to sometimes do something that you don't expect. I think that's what is exciting. And I think if you go too far down the hole of that character wouldn't do that, and that character, before you know it, the character's only ever going to do what it's done in other movies. So, and honestly, I mean, Jim was really, he wrote for the story. He was story structure, and then the script went to Jerry Jewell and Kirk Thatcher, and really the dialogue came out of those guys. What was your question? How do you decide what they can and can't do? I mean, for me, it's like I know them. I love this way of working with the Muppets, where they become an ensemble of performers, and their backstory. The great thing about this movie and Christmas Carol is they're not doing things that they've done before. It's not Piggy's jealous always, and Kermit can't commit, and Fozzie's scared that he's not funny, and Gonzo. What you can do once you cast them in other roles is all of that stuff becomes the depth of their characters, and all of those relationships go into the subtext, so that you can have really delightful moments, like when Piggy comes and she sees him and then she hits it. It's like you know what kind of a thing that means to happen in the past. So I loved working with that. So I guess I just know the characters, and Jerry certainly knew the characters.
I've always, I think there's a way of looking at these two films that, the Muppet Show is set entirely inside their theater, and this is sort of their summer stock or whatever. Like, we're seeing them, not just doing a vaudeville thing where it's a series of acts, but they're all doing this show as themselves, but playing the characters.
Yeah. And we do break the fourth wall in this one quite a few times, and we let the rats, of course, the whole rat. That's the whole thing is a fourth wall breaker. Yeah, I think in this one we're breaking the fourth wall probably 10, 12, 15 times even, and in Christmas Carol probably only 2 or 3 times.
One last question, then we're going to throw it to the audience. I'm just curious about, for directing this, if you researched other sort of legendary pirate films or other Treasure Island adaptations that, to sort of get an idea of what something of this scope is going to look like and how it would flow.
Well, it's, Muppet movies are every single shot's a special effect. So you almost can't study another film style and emulate it with Muppets. Val Strazovic, the production designer, who did both Christmas Carol and this, an absolutely genius production designer. So I largely let him, roll with what do these environments look like, and then shooting. Like I said, it's always a puzzle. Every shot, every scene's a puzzle, and you can't really go into it saying I'm going to shoot with this style. I mean, I do have a style. The cameras are often not level. I kind of make, keep the audience leaning forward. Try not to shoot in a very, very comfortable way, and intercutting close-ups aren't matching sizes usually with me. But in terms of the sort of look and feel of it, that was really Val Strazovic and with the production design, John Fenner with the lighting. He has a beautiful style of lighting. Also did both films. And then Hans Zimmer, when I went to talk to Hans, he just loved the idea of doing a big swashbuckling pirate score, and you hear this, you guys can hear it. It sounds like Pirates of the Caribbean scores that he then did afterwards, and everybody, and of course he won all sorts of Academy Awards and stuff for those scores, and it's like, yeah, he did it first.
There's no that without this.
My name's Sean.
Hi, Sean.
And Christmas Carol is my favorite Muppets movie ever. I watch it every holiday, so thank you so much for that. And my question is, there's a lot of musical numbers in this. Which one was the most complicated one or took the longest for you to figure out?
Probably Cabin Fever. That was just a tough scene in concept because it literally happens in a moment where the story is dragging. And we all knew the story is going to be dragging right there, so we came up with as zany a musical number as we could to just sort of get the audience sitting forward again, and then we could launch into the back third of the movie. That one was pretty hard because shooting on that boat was pretty hard. It was, there's puppeteers down through the floor everywhere that you see a puppet, and then there is floor everywhere you see an actor. So that was probably the most complicated. Yeah, and Professional Pirate was pretty complicated, but Tim is so good. I mean, it was really just make sure we see Tim, and it's going to be great. But I think, Cabin Fever was the toughest. And conceptually, it's so weird. I mean, you can see, we turn off the sun. You get 20 seconds into the song, we turn the sun off.
And I think Kermit and Piggy singing upside down is kind of this movie's Kermit on a bicycle.
Well, kind of. I mean, for me, the Kermit on the bicycle moments in this are 3. One is them singing upside down. Obviously, that actually didn't take very long to shoot, really, because they were just stuck there. There's no choreography or anything. Yeah, but hanging them upside down was just a really unique way to do a love ballad. You know, I had just come off of Christmas Carol where Jeffrey Katzenberg said, cut the ballad from the theatrical release. You can have it in the video release because kids get really antsy in love ballads. And he's absolutely right. I sat in the test screenings of Christmas Carol and I watched all the kids suddenly start walking up and down the aisles, you know, during the love song. So I knew I wanted to do a love ballad in such a way that it couldn't possibly be boring. So that was why we hung them upside down with the rope is about to burn through, so that it would stay in the movie. So that was one. So the other two are Kermit sword fighting and him jumping and flipping along, and that was, you know, this was Christmas Carol. We had a handful of digital effects and maybe 5. This one we have maybe 20. This is all really before digital effects were coming in, and primarily there were still opticals, and you couldn't do that stuff with Kermit with opticals. So I was doing it with this brand new digital technology, and trying to figure all of that out, the sword fight and fighting and then losing the sword. And so that was, yeah, so the sword fighting Kermit, that's one. Hanging upside down, love ballad, that was one. And then the other one was, and I called Hans Zimmer and I said, so Piggy has this entrance and it needs to be the biggest crescendo you've ever written. It just has to start at like 10 and then it has to go to like 25. And Hans wrote it and it just keeps building and building and building. And it was so delightful. So I was like, I'm gonna try to make the greatest film entrance for any star ever. And then I was like, I'm gonna get an elephant. I'm gonna get a real elephant. And it's gonna be walking around, puppeteers around the elephant. And I'm sure it wouldn't pass today's safety standards at all. But actually, when I came on set to shoot that scene, so the elephant was walking, it was a big circle through all the rocks and stuff. And I walked on set and the elephant was walking the circle. And so I was introduced to the elephant trainer, and he introduced me to Pearl, and it was Pearl, the elephant. And I said, well, you don't have to have her, she doesn't have to just keep walking. And he said, oh, yes, she does. And he said, otherwise she'll lean. I said, what does that mean? He said, she'll have this entire set on the ground, everything will be on the ground. And I was like, oh good, yeah, keep her walking,
You've seen so much evolution over the decades, and a lot of us have grown up with many iterations of the Muppets. I just wondered, like, where do you see the future, not only of like the Muppets, but just in terms of puppeteering and puppets as entertainment, for like the next generations? Where do you see it going?
Well, I think it's not going anywhere. I mean, puppetry is old. What do they say? Some people say it's the oldest performance art form in the world. And maybe it is, and it probably comes from when you're trying to get your baby to go to sleep at night. And it's like, you better go to sleep, or Mr. Pajama Man is gonna get mad. You know, it's like it's something inherently delightful about bringing something that is clearly inanimate to life. And that's quite different from like CGI animation. With Muppets, and with really most of the puppetry we do, even when it's animatronics, we know we're not giving a perfect illusion. It's puppetry. You know that it's an inanimate thing that is being brought to life, so you appreciate the artistry, both of the creation of the characters, but also the performance of the characters. So it's a great way to realize characters. It is also very artistic, and the audience is appreciating. It's like you can watch some of these very highly finished Marvel characters, for instance, that I think are amazing. And then there's 1,000 artists on the credits. that come up, but they're so convincing sometimes, those illusions, that I worry that the audience has lost track of the fact that it's artistry. And in some ways that can be a little less inspirational, maybe. So I don't think puppetry is going anywhere. I think we'll see how Muppets evolve over the years. I think this is a really good formula. I think Christmas Carol and Treasure Island were great formulas that I feel Disney should do. But yeah, so what we do digital puppetry. We do real-time CG animated, 3D animated characters where we have puppeteers that are performing the bodies and puppeteers performing the head and voicing the character, but we do it all in real time. So we are doing CG animation still as a puppetry art form. And then of course we have the animatronic effects that, were big, and then they went out because everybody said, oh, but CGI does it better. And then all these filmmakers went, wait a second, no, I actually liked having something really there with the actors, and the actors like it where I can actually direct a scene with the characters. The idea that every time I've got a non-human character, they're just not there is not good for storytelling and making a good, entertaining story. So I don't really think puppetry is going anywhere. I think it just keeps being applied in new and different ways, and yet the most basic art form of, bring a sock to life with ping pong balls, which is basically Kermit, I think is it's always going to work as long as it's performed well.
Speaking of the craft, real quick, and I meant to bring this up before, obviously you've got the Julien's auctions happening with various props and puppets. Talk a little about the craft of just the tactile stuff in this movie. You've got treasure chests and doubloons and jewels and boats and all this stuff. Like, what's your, as a director, how involved do you get, or how early do you start looking at what's it all going to look like? How's it going to get built out? What's the world that the Muppets are going to inhabit? How's that going to be?
Well, again, I come back to that. What is the central contrast in the movie? The conflict, and it was swashbuckling pirate movie versus Muppet movie. And so it all sort of grows out of that. But I want a real credible world where it feels real but not, so all the mountains are weird. They're not, it doesn't look like a Caribbean island. It looks like something else, and the ship is bent, it's not a straight ship. Everything's a little bit twisted. And all of that is to help support that we have created this entire world. We've created everything. And therefore you're going to suspend your disbelief and accept all the crazy stuff that we're going to do in all of the scenes. Again, it starts with a production designer, and Val would do paintings and tons of forced perspective and stuff like that. People, like when they're looking at the skeletons, on the hill, the skeletons are like this big and they're only about 20 feet from them, and it looks like they're 100 yards away. There's lots of forced perspective and tricks like that. And then we shot both of these movies in England, and the English art departments are really quite extraordinary. And they almost overdo it. So they come in and they know exactly what period Louis Stevenson, planned, who set the book. And so they're going to come in with stuff, and they're going to be super authentic. And then I have to start twisting them a little bit. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, was there anything left on the cutting room floor that you sort of wish made it into the movie? Or any songs or scenes, or?
Almost nothing. Both Christmas Carol and Treasure Island, the entire movie did end up in the movie, except Christmas Carol, they had to cut the ballad, but then it went back in again. But Muppet movies, again, there's no 4-hour first cut. There just isn't the material. It's too complicated. You can't just go, let's do another take where we try something that's going to take 5 minutes instead of 2. It takes a lot of real careful preparation and execution. But in this one, I tried to, I pushed it a little. I like having stuff that works at an adult level, but will be over the head of kids. And the big, the main one that you see here is Piggy going, "Oh, hello, Long John," and then Kermit going, "What, him too?" And obviously that's the joke that Long John has. And Disney let that one slide. I had another one though. That Disney couldn't let it slide because, well, I'll tell you what happened. So I'm in a test screening, and it's when Polly is telling Clueless to give Long John Silver the spot. So in my first test screening, so Polly says, "Clueless, give it to him." And Clueless looks at Long John and says to him, "But I'm not even attracted to him." He said, no, give him the spot, idiot. So we're in this test screening, and Clueless says, "But I'm not even attracted to him." And my mother, who's sitting about 10 feet from me and about 5 feet from Jeffrey Katzenberg, goes, "No, you can't do that." So, needless to say, we changed that line. If anything, stuff ended up going into the movie, like the rats going down to get the treasure. We had our first test screenings. It was like, "What's your favorite scene?" The rats getting the treasure. I had it playing with title. It was going to be credits rolling over it, and then it became like this really important scene that everybody loved. So that actually was a scene that went in that I just shot for credits to roll over. I'm sorry. So you were asking a question.
Yeah. My name's Shane. I love the movie. It was really good. I wanted to know, because when that scene where Gonzo and the mouse or the rat they got dirty in the fire, did you have to switch out a puppet?
Yes, we did. Yeah, no, we had to have the burnt costumes. Yeah, that's exactly what we did. And of course, with Muppets, you just take their head off and put it on another puppet. So we had their burnt versions of them. Well, not with Rizzo. Rizzo, you can't take his head off. His head is part of his body. Oh, no, actually, that one I think you could. No, I don't think you could. I think it was two different Rizzos. But yeah, no, that's exactly what we did. We burned a costume, and we had a burnt costume for Gonzo, burnt body, and a burnt version of Rizzo. That is exactly how we did it.
What about Ghost Sam?
About Ghost Sam?
Yes, was that just an entire...
Oh no, that really was powder.
Oh wow.
Yeah, no, I mean you saw when we cut down below and you see Bunsen with the powder. That really was just a talcum powder.
Oh. Okay.
And then we were able to clean it off. Yeah.
It's pounding it like a rug.
My family watches Muppet Christmas Carol every year, so thank you once again for making that movie. I've never actually seen Treasure Island before. It was very fun. Still holds up to this day. My question is, when you got asked to make Muppet Christmas Carol, obviously Jim had only passed away a year or two before, and now you're being asked to take this big leadership role that you hadn't before. So can you talk a bit about that process?
Yeah, I was utterly terrifying, and I was terrified, and I did not want to direct the movie. I had only directed, I had been the lead, I had directed in a series called Mother Goose Stories. I directed second unit on Ninja Turtles, which was a very substantial second unit. And I'd done some second unit work on some other things. Ninja Turtles was fun. That was crazy. So hard to make. No, I honestly, well, this is I'm Jim Henson's son, so I always feel like I haven't earned the opportunity to do anything that I'm doing. It's, you know, that's going to be a curse that goes with all second generation people like me. But I really actually was scared of directing the film. I knew that there was going to be an enormous amount of pressure, because honestly, when my dad died, everybody just assumed the Jim Henson Company was closing, and that was just an assumption. And so when we set out to make Christmas Carol, I had to put a whole lot of time in with Steve Whitmire on his Kermit, and we were looking for a protected spot for Kermit so that so he didn't have a lot of dialogue, but he had a good heartfelt character with Bob Cratchit, and so I was working on that, but I didn't really want to direct it. I loved it, but Frank Oz was adamant that I should direct it, and he said, I'll go and I'll be there with you every day, but you have to direct this. I really think you have to direct this. And so I did. But I was terrified. I really was. And also I was terrified because I knew I couldn't make what the other three Muppet movies were. And I knew my dad was basically, when he died, he was selling the company to Disney because he didn't know how to make more Muppet movies. And he thought he could see a huge future for the Muppets in the Disney theme parks, and he was going to be working right in the center of Disney. And you know, if my dad had lived, half of the Disney parks would be Muppets, I'm sure, because that was where he was going. With the first three movies, the first one's an origin story. The third one's already a shift, and it's a different version of the origin story. And so he was worried that he couldn't figure out another movie to do. And so there we were trying to figure out a movie to do, and that's when we came up with this idea of let's do a classic story where they're playing other roles. But I knew I couldn't do like the first three Muppet movies, which are classic. They're basically very much sort of American comedy movies where there's two laughs per page, hold for the laugh. This is good. Treasure Island is going more in that direction, but when we were setting out to make Christmas Carol, I was the guy who'd been doing the Storyteller series, was a hugely creative period, and probably molded me the most as a filmmaker, even though I wasn't directing. I was just doing character work, but it was like 9 movies that we did in a short amount of time. And so I liked that darker feeling. I liked those darker worlds, and I liked the drama, and I knew I couldn't just do a bright, shticky, 2 laughs per page comedy. And so when I did Christmas Carol, I was aware that that's what I was doing, and I was aware that Disney didn't want that. That's not what they thought was going to work. And then they started seeing the rushes, and yes, they kept saying, could be funnier, could be brighter. But ultimately the film tested very well for audiences, and they thought, yeah, that was actually really a good idea, that we went into basically we made a drama, not a comedy. And then when we came back to this one, now I guess maybe I had a little more confidence. So I thought, yeah, let's go wacky and let's put Kirk Thatcher in the writing room, and that's gonna do it for sure. So then it just becomes a lot more like a comedy. But yeah, it was hard. It was hard and stressful.
Do you feel like the company's in a place now where, when the time comes for you to pass it on to someone else, that there's sort of a chain of legacy waiting to step up?
I think there probably always is. There's always new performers, new puppet builders, new production designers, directors, who kind of love what we do and love what our company does. Yeah, so I think it definitely can keep going, for sure. I honestly think it didn't need me. I was there in the center, but it was Frank Oz and Richard Hunt and Jerry Nelson and Dave Goles and all the Creature Shop people and the producers, Martin Baker, Dr. Kenworthy. You know, all of these super talented people that my father had, you know, gathered around him over the years. And without their support and their enthusiasm, it wouldn't have worked.
And your mom and press.
Oh, and my mom making sure that I didn't put in, but I'm not even attracted to it.
First of all, I really love the movie so much. Great Muppet Caper is probably like my favorite of the movies.
Okay.
Hugely fan. So I noticed when you were like talking about like possible movies, Murder of the Orient Express was one of them. And I remember seeing Muppets Tonight, which is one of my favorite of the Muppets like TV shows of all time, which came out with this. It was
yeah, thanks. You know what? I watched it all again recently, and I was like, wow, we really did do a good show. It was such a shame we could only do one season, but unfortunately, that was thank God it's Friday, TGIF on ABC. And the ratings were going down and down and down. And that's when we were on. And but I think it was a great show. And you know what, the ABC folks always loved it. But yeah, it just didn't do well enough. I wish we could have done more seasons. Sorry, you had a question.
No, you're good. I think one of my favorite sketches was Murder on the Disoriented Express. I remember seeing that with like Jason Alexander, and that was probably just one of the funniest things ever. And I noticed there was like more of those like parody sketches, like going into movies like Independence Day, like more than there were in the original Muppet Show. What was that like? Like kind of getting to get more into like those movies, because that was a side of the Muppets. I mean, I'd seen that with Sesame with Monster Piece Theater, which was also awesome, but I'd never seen that in the core Muppets before. Like, what was that like?
Well, we were out of the theater, so we weren't sort of confined to because even though in the Muppet Show, some of those musical scenes and stuff, obviously that's not a stage, but it is basically all proscenium. The Muppet Show, and it's always trying to keep alive the idea of, we're putting on a stage show. We go backstage and we're going on stage. And with Muppets Tonight, it's a TV studio, and yes, they're going on camera, but we just felt like now we can do kind of anything that you could see on TV. You see movies on TV, we can do movie parodies. You can, you have talk shows. I mean, we had sketches that were talk shows and game shows and stuff like that, which you wouldn't have seen on the Muppet Show because those are television ideas, and it was always a variety theater was what the Muppet Show was meant to be. So it was more just that we grabbed the creative license of it being a TV studio and seeing what we could do to sort of open it up, and also because we knew we needed to do different things. We couldn't just do. My dad stopped. The Muppet Show was, I think, the second most successful show in the world when he canceled it, and that's just unheard of that a producer would do that. But he was worried after 5 seasons that he was going to start repeating himself because he felt like the box that he was creating inside was full, and he didn't. And so we needed a whole new box, and so that we were creating in a different way that we could start filling that box. So yeah, part of it was we kind of wanted to have a similar energy to the Muppet Show, but also something that was new and different.
Next year,
Holy cow.
Any plans to, I don't know, put it back in theaters or?
It looks so good on the screen, and Christmas Carol does get an opportunity to get back on the screen often because it's a Christmas movie and theaters like to stunt it in, and so, over the years I've seen Christmas Carol in theaters quite a bit, but this one, it really does, it really plays nicely in a big theater. I don't know exactly, I mean, Disney managed the Muppet assets, so my guess is they will do something. They were certainly pushing Christmas Carol for its 30th.
Sure.
So.
And anything coming up we should be on the lookout
Oh, I can't talk about anything. No, I can't. It's you know, it's only when you've shot it. Well, no, it depends, I guess, on what type of project. I have a lot of things in development. The company has a lot of things in development. Fraggle Rock's got new specials. That is exciting. But in terms of things that we can talk about that we're working on now, there's not a lot that I can talk about.
Well, we'll keep an eye out in any event. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for joining us.